And what does that allow you to do? Well, when you start sprinting and you start training it and you start training your anaerobic pathway, if you don't do that often, you adapt your body to become fitter, and your body falls into this realm of, wait, I need to be able to sprint as well as be aerobic. And so you start losing some weight. Kickstarts your metabolism, kickstarts your body, kickstarts your muscle growing and muscle regenesis. And that's super important if you're trying to lose weight and become the fittest possible version of yourself. Welcome to Kula, the community for South Asian health. Kula is a Sanskrit word for community, which is what this podcast is all about, bringing together a community of the leading South Asian health experts to talk all things health, fitness, and nutrition. Poor dietary habits and lack of exercise in our community are leading to increased rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, a negative trend that requires radical change. I'm your host, Krish Nandkeshwar, a health and fitness enthusiast, competitor, and coach motivated to educate and inspire the South Asian community to live healthier and combat disease. I interviewed the top South Asian health experts, including doctors, athletes, fitness coaches, and nutritionists, to share their expertise and educate us all on how we can live healthier that is unique to our South Asian identities. Thank you all for listening, and welcome to all the new listeners. So far, we have received very positive feedback, and I'm really excited to share the future episodes with you all. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, share, and spread the word. All right, welcome back to the pod, guys. Really excited to get this one going again. It's episode 6, so thank you all for the listeners for the first 5 episodes. If you've got any value out of it, please like, subscribe, share, do all that. And I really want to spread the word on what those episodes are really talking about. So in the first 5, we were lucky enough to listen to an athlete, an ultra runner, and talking about mindset with Sachin Lati. Then I had 2 female trainers, Dilpreet Patil and Julie George, talk about what it's like as a fitness trainer and building healthy habits, what your routines should look like in exercise and eating, just to sustain and to have a healthy lifestyle. And then on the other 2 episodes, episode 3 and episode 5, I had 2 different doctors. Dr. Matthew Nagar, who's a naturopathic doctor, focusing on plant-based and vegan, really talking about a vegan diet, what the importance of what it is in that, and how we can live a healthy life if you want to be plant-based or vegan. And then we also touches on cholesterol, which is a really important topic. So if there's any insights that you would like to pick up from there, I'd recommend listening to that one. And then Dr. Amit Sumal in episode 5 really dives deep into diabetes, and he's an endocrinologist, so this is what he studies. We talk about your A1C, your blood sugar. But what I want to talk about in this episode is kind of bringing everything together, because we talk about theory, we talk about why we should be exercising, why we should be eating healthy. And, I'm a trainer and also compete, and I've played a bunch of different sports, so you can consider it as an athlete and a trainer and someone who's knowledgeable in this space. I want to teach from my lens on like how I build out a fitness regimen. So what does that mean? And what does that look like for each individual? Maybe you're trying to get into your workout routines. You're supposed to do it. You're supposed to exercise. But where do you start? And what does fitness really mean? What does it look like? How do you do this on a weekly basis? How do you do this on a monthly basis and even an annual basis? And that's what I'm hoping to make out of this episode. So it's just me talking today, and we'll have a whole new set of speakers in the next 5, and then I'll routinely jump in there and kind of give my input. So going into this one, I really want to touch into fitness. So what is fitness? And the definition of fitness is different for each sport. Everyone has a different realm of what they would consider it. And so some would say an Ironman, someone who do a swim with a bike in a marathon, is extremely fit, and they are the pinnacle of fitness. And that could be true, and they do have a lot of cardiovascular endurance, right, to be able to run and swim and bike for long periods of time. But generally, Ironmans usually lack strength. And so are they the fittest person if they are lacking strength? And then you have the opposite side of that, is like a power lifter who's extremely strong. And we know that, but can they keep up on the endurance world? Is that really a definition of fitness? And then you have decathletes who have different skill sets, and they're strong and they can sprint, but do they have the endurance? Like what really determines someone that's fit. A basketball player, a hockey player, all these different sports mean different things. And so my view of fitness follows the definition of really the CrossFit's definition, which is of being the fittest version of yourself across like 10 general skills. And CrossFit defines it as you have your cardiovascular endurance, you have your stamina, your strength, your ability to be flexible, power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. And if you take all of these, they combine into a overall fit athlete. And that is something that I believe in. So you think about it in terms of if you're in a building's on a fire and you have to go save somebody, do you want the powerlifter to go run in there who can pick you up but doesn't have the endurance to get you out because they're out of breath? Or do you want the Ironman super endurance guy that can run in there and run out, but doesn't have the strength to pick you up? And that's really important to think about. So what do you want? And that's where you want an overall realm of fitness, someone who can do both. Maybe not the best, maybe not the fastest endurance athlete, but maybe not the strongest person, but is almost like second place in each one and is the fittest across all different domains. So they are strong enough to run in there and pick you up, and they have the endurance to pull you out of a fire. That's an example, and that's kind of what CrossFit definition is. You can think about it as how would you train the Navy SEALs, right? And what does that look like? And we're going to dive deep into that. So looking at this stuff in terms of adaptations, cardiovascular endurance, that's aerobic training and anaerobic training. Cardiovascular endurance, what we call cardio. I'll go into that, and what that means is getting your heart rate up, building metabolic conditioning. You can feel yourself breathing, whether it's slow, like you're going on a walk, or you can feel yourself breathing like you're sprinting and you're breathing really hard and you're out of gas. And that's the difference between, aerobic versus anaerobic. And I'll talk onto that. And then developing strength. Are you getting stronger? Are you more stable? Can you get range of motion like in a squat? And that's that flexibility part there. The strength is how much are you lifting, the speed of how much you lift it could be power. And then the stamina that you can develop is more of the reps that you can do continuing. So you want to be building all of those areas of fitness. And then you have your neurological adaptations, which would be the coordination, the accuracy, your agility, your balance, things that require practice to train under. So in organic adaptations, you can train them. You can train your cardiovascular endurance. You can train your strength over time. And you're constantly training and training and training. And that's how you develop those areas to get better. With neurological adaptations, you're doing this with practice. So think about writing. If you're learning how to write cursive, for example, that's a thing that you have to learn the neurological pathways of moving your hand in a certain way with accuracy and agility, right? Keeping some balance. That is a lot of coordination, and that's a neurological development more than training. You need to practice that. You don't train to do that. You already have the strength and ability to write, to move your muscles. Now it's just learning how to create that with your brain. And then when you combine both neurological and organic adaptations, you can develop your power and your speed. How do you fire your muscles using, that connection neurologically? And how do you go faster on a run? How do you release that fast twitch muscle fibers? So these are just kind of a high level thing on what fitness is. Now, I want to break this down into, I want to get to the point where we can do a training plan. So what does a week look like? What does a month look like? So if you're fit, when we look at fitness in terms of a regimen, you should think about it as supporting your overall health. So think about it this way. The reason why you want to work out and go to the gym and exercise is to achieve wellness. Imagine if you're on the side of sickness and you have high cholesterol, you have higher sugar levels, or you're overweight. Well, you want to work out and exercise so you can get your numbers back in check, right? You want to have normal levels. You want to lose the weight. And that's where you're achieving wellness, or you're targeting wellness. And that's where fitness comes in, right? To achieve that wellness. Same with diet and recovery, but we're focusing on fitness here. Now, if you're training as an athlete and you have already achieved wellness, and now you're trying to hit peak performance, you're competing, you're a professional athlete, or you're striving to be that, you're striving to get better and better. Well, there's a point where you can train and then you need to rest and recover. But if you don't rest and recover enough and you keep training, you get to a point of overtraining. And what happens in overtraining is it leads back to that sickness where your body starts breaking down again. You're working out too much and you need rest. You're getting brain fog. You're like low energy. You don't have the cravings to work out. So that's overtraining. That's very rare for the common person because generally we're not working out that much. And it can be common if you're competing or at a high level. And I've experienced being overtrained before, competing in CrossFit for sure. And that's something to keep in mind if you're excessively training. But for the majority of people that listen to this, it's really about getting fitness from sickness to wellness. How do you improve your LDL? How do you improve your sugar levels? How do you improve your strength, your mobility, your cardiovascular endurance? And I'm going to lay out a plan that really helps that and kind of explain why or how I lay things out. So understanding like the paradigm between sickness and wellness and fitness or super wellness, it's important to know where you fall. Like, are you as fit as you possibly can be? Maybe not. Or are you striving towards that? And that's your ultimate goal. I want to like wipe out the idea that as you age, your fittest days were back when you were younger. And I've seen people in their 40s, their 50s, and their 60s say to me that they're the fittest they've ever been. And that's what you can strive to be. Like just where you are today, don't worry about where you were in the past or what you were when you're 20s or your teens. Imagine what you can do today if you just strive to be the fittest version of yourself at your current age. And I think that will switch the mindset of a lot of people. And you can start with small habits and you can start with a small breakdown. So I want to break down fitness into three pieces. It's your strength, it's your metabolic endurance, and it's your mobility and balance or your flexibility. It's like a mix of that. And when I think of fitness and when I program for my clients and also programming for myself, when I mean programming, writing the workouts out, I'm thinking about how can this person, either myself or my clients, improve their strength? How can they improve their endurance? And how can they improve their mobility and balance to become a more functional person and become an athlete? I think it's critically important to treat yourself as an athlete, whether you think you are or you're not. Every single person is an athlete. We are humans and we're built to move. So think about it that way. As an athlete, you want to eat well, you want to train hard, and you want to recover to support your training and your eating. Now, if you do that, and you do that in all different realms of recovery, could be your foam rolling, your stretching, your massage, your ice ice baths and saunas. It could be your mental health recovery, all of that, and like minimizing your stress. All of that is great for everybody, and you should do that and think, oh, that's what athletes do. Treat it like that. Eating healthy and eating clean food, that's better for everybody, right? And that's what athletes do on a regular. So you do like that as well. You want to eat clean. And then being the fittest possible person that you can be, that's training. That's training yourself to adapt and become a better person physically. And that's what athletes do as well. Now, they might specify in a certain sport, which is okay. But for you, you have to be specifying in fitness for life. And what does fitness for life look like? Well, I would break that down into three things. That's your strength, that's your cardiovascular endurance, or your metabolic conditioning, and that's your flexibility, your mobility. So, and balance, really. So let's take the three of those and let's break it down. So, strength would be your your legs and your upper body, right? Your back, your core, you're hitting your muscles to grow those muscles or to make them stronger. Now you can change it so that sometimes they get bigger or sometimes they just get stronger, but overall, you're trying to feed the muscles to make them work. Okay, so strength training, which we've been taught for many years, is, how do we get stronger? Now, let's break this down. Say you've never worked out before, you're just starting a workout routine. You have your legs that push, called a lower body push. You have the lower body pull, you have an upper body push, an upper body pull, and you have unilateral and you have core. I like to think of it that way. So what does that all mean? Lower body push will be your squats. You're pushing the ground away. You're squatting, right? That's your quads, glute dominant. Lunges, that's another example of a lower body push. Lower body pull would be like you're hinging, like a deadlift, picking something up. Why is that functional, or why are both of those functional? A deadlift, picking something up, think about picking up a box from the ground or a suitcase. Okay, great. A lower body push, like a squat, imagine sitting down in a chair and then standing back up. That's a squat. That's the top of the squat. So it's highly functional. Then you also have the upper body push and the upper body pull. Upper body push would be like your bench press. You're pushing away somebody, right? Or your push up. You also have like a strict press, or pressing above overhead, your shoulder work. So you're putting your dishes away, or you're picking up a kid. That's a shoulder. You're pressing up overhead. That's a shoulder upper body press. Then you have the upper body pull, which would be like a pull up or a bent over row. And a bent over row is like picking something up, and a pull up is pulling yourself out of the car. So these are really functional movements that you can break them down. Unilateral would be the lunge. It would be like a single leg deadlift where you're isolating one leg or the other, or like isolating an arm, a bicep curl, or a single arm press. And those are important to develop balance across both sides of your body, rather than pressing heavily with maybe 60% effort on one side and 40% effort on the other side using your dominant arm. You can really isolate that by doing unilateral. So that's important. I can touch on that. And then also the core. The core is the center of your body. Your abs, your lower back, your mid back, everything that's in that thoracic range is your core. And so it's the center of your body. You want to make sure that that's strong, because you have to tighten your core when you squat, you deadlift, when you press. So when you're working that out, it's extremely important to get that right. So what does that look like in terms of a week? So if we have strength training, let's break it down into a lower body push, lower body pull, an upper body pull, and then a upper body push. So if I have 3 days, I'm gonna work out for 3 days a week, and this is very common. I'll work out for 3 days a week, and I want to get started. I don't know what to do. Well, one day you can do a lower body push. That means your squats. That's your main strength piece. The next day, maybe that was a Monday, the next day on a Wednesday, you would come in and you would do an upper body push. So you're doing your pressing with your bench and your strict press, right? And then the next day you come in, you can do a combination of upper body pull and up and lower body pull. You do deadlifts and you are picking something up and you do pull-ups. Now you do that progressively each week, 3 days a week of strength training. You're hitting all your different muscle groups as compound movements. So what are compound movements? They're movements where you're using more than one joint or muscle group to complete a lift. So the bench press uses the shoulder, the chest, and the tricep. That's more than one. Versus a bicep curl that would only use the bicep. That's just a one movement, not a compound movement. So when you're working on that, if you have 3 days a week, it's important to think, hey, am I getting my pushing down with my legs? Am I getting a upper body pull, upper with a pull up, and a lower body pull with the deadlift, which is also a hinge? And am I getting an upper body push, pressing away? If you do that continuously, you'll have enough strength for life. And now, what does that look like in terms of sets? You're going to think 3 to 4 sets on these compound movements, and anywhere between 5 to 10 to 12 reps, I'd recommend. So say 3 to 4 sets of squat, maybe at 5 reps, and then you do a supplement to that. Maybe it'd be like a leg press or a lunge. And this is important. You can carry that forward with like do your deadlifts, 3 to 5, 3 to 8, 3 to 10, 3 sets of reps with those sets. 3 sets of those reps, and then the same thing with your bench. And so you're constantly hitting your movements. The following week, you can add that up. And I'll talk about progressive overload. That's a 3-day plan, which is great for just the average person trying to get into strength training. You're moving your body in different directions to really make it as strong as possible. In addition to that, in that strength, you're going to hit a cardio that day and you're going to hit a core piece. And I'll get into those in a second. But let's say you want to do 5 days a week. Great. You're doing 5 days a week. Maybe your split would be a little bit different. And that would be, let's say, upper body push on a heavy, and then a second upper body push a little bit lighter and more dynamic, a little bit faster. And that can teach different muscle fibers to grow. And the same thing, a lower body push heavy, and maybe a lower body push that's a little bit lighter and faster mixed with a lower body pull. And then that's 4 days. And then you'd have a lower body pull, upper body pull workout as your 5th day. And those are 5 strength days. Really going beyond 5 strength days, I don't think it's necessary. You can build a lot of strength over that, and as long as you are moving correctly. If you aren't moving correctly or you're unsure, it's very important to get a trainer just to learn how to do that correctly, and then you'll be off and running and you'll be good in no time. So that's strength training. Unilateral gets added into that as well, hitting your lunges, hitting your shoulder press, and you can do that on certain days. And if you have questions on strength plans, I can help with that. Then you will have core. Core can look like a few things, dynamic and static. Then you have core. So I will break core down into dynamic and static. If you want rock solid abs, or you want your abs to be tight and you want them to look good, you have to work on your abs and your core multiple times a week. I recommend 3 to 4 times a week, but you can definitely go up to 5 times a week. So 3 to 4 times a week, well, you have static holds in your core. Static holds would be planks, hollow holds, L-sits, anything where you're just holding in a static position, but using your core to do that. And so hitting those once or twice a week will really develop stability and strength in your core. Then you have the dynamic side of core, which is like your sit-ups, your crunches, your leg lifts, where you're moving your core in and out, right? That's dynamic. And then you have your other way of doing dynamic, but we're hitting your obliques from going, like both those ways are kind of like transverse and longitudinal in your abs, but they also run diagonal. And that's where you can hit with obliques, like Russian twists. You can hit hanging leg raises with a turn. You can hit windshield wipers. So think about your core as, how would I break this up in a static and a dynamic? I recommend doing one static day, the next day doing a dynamic day, and keep alternating like that. So if you work out 3 times a week, you just alternate across the weeks. And if you're working out 4 times a week, 5 times a week, you just keep alternating within that week. So for example, you might do a static day on Monday, which is by plank holds, and you might do a dynamic day of sit-ups and crunches on a Wednesday. And then on Friday, you might come back and do more static. So, which is another plank thing. That's how I would treat core. When you're developing strength, it's really important to continuously be hitting this stuff. And why it's important to lift weights, it's because like you're growing your muscles, right? You're trying to tell your body that I need these muscles to work. And in our culture, it's really critical. Like osteoporosis is something that is very common, especially among women. What does that mean? It means your bones are getting weaker. And how can you improve that? You can improve that by strength training. How does that work? So osteoporosis, or let's talk about the bone. The muscle attaches to the bone. And so when you are strength training, you create shear from the muscle to the bone. And a shear force is that if you put your hands together and you kind of slide your hands away, like that friction force that you're creating, that is the shear force. So imagine if you squat. Well, you squat, your muscles are required to work, but they're creating a shear force as they're putting under stress onto your bones. And they create that shear force, which over time builds strength in the bone. And that strength in the bone allows you to prevent osteoporosis because it makes the bone just stronger and denser. And that's why strength training is extremely important for our community, but just overall in general. Why else is important? Well, every pound of muscle you gain burns a pound of fat per week by just being there because it requires so much energy to be active. So if you're trying to lose weight, you want to be putting on muscle. You want to look dense. You want to have dense muscle, and you want it to do the work for you. It's an investment. It's an investment for your body, strength training. So oftentimes I have clients that start doing some strength training and say, my weight in the scale is not going down, but I feel stronger. Your muscle mass might be going up, your fat might be going down, or your body fat, and that's why your weight is staying the same. So it's important to think about having or looking at your body fat percentage and looking at your lean body mass. Seeing, is your body mass going up by the muscle mass, which is what you want, that you're getting stronger and getting more defined? And is your fat content, your body fat, going down? And so once that happens, you might stay stagnant with your weight, which I wouldn't worry about. I really worry about the body fat percentage because that's really where your health is determined. So that's something also to know specifically in strength training. The next piece I want to talk about is cardio. Oftentimes people will go into cardio and they will hop on the elliptical for 30 minutes and just casually ride. Or they'll hop on the bike for 30 minutes, casual ride, or 45 minutes, and they focus on calories burn. That is great. That is one good way to get cardio in. However, you are missing out. If that's all you do, you are missing out on the potential benefits from high intensity, where you get your heart rate up significantly. And let me explain this. So in cardio, we have like what we call cardio, or your cardiovascular endurance. We have three metabolic pathways. You have your phosphagen pathway, right? And that one is something under 10 seconds or something anaerobic. Imagine sprinting really quick, high power sprints, or lifting really heavy, like a power clean or a box jump. You're jumping as high as you can. That's a phosphagen pathway, very fast, anaerobic. You cannot sustain that. That's one metabolic pathway of cardio, using your heart rate to get you up, getting your heart rate up at a high rate. The second one is glycolytic pathway, and that's still anaerobic, but something you can last for several minutes. Not too long, but it's a moderate intensity, not as intense as your phosphagen, your first one, but it's moderate intensity, still develops power, still develops strength, but it's anaerobic. That's kind of your lactate threshold. So sometimes when we feel that burn, we're working out, and you feel the burn in your muscle, that's the glycolytic pathway. You're still getting your heart rate up. Imagine you're running a mile. That's a really good example, an 800-meter run or a mile. Man, you're really feeling that burn. It's hurting. Your heart rate's going. That's a glycolytic pathway. That's anaerobic based with aerobic, a little bit mixed. And then you have the aerobic pathway or oxidative pathway. This is the one where you go for low intensity and you're at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 30, 40, 60 minutes, whatever it may be. And you can just sustain that effort and you're just breathing through it. That's great. Now you need all three of those to really develop your overall fitness to become the fittest possible version of yourself. So when I talk about cardio, I want people to target each one of those pathways. So if you look at it on a 1 week training cycle, you're going to work out 3 days a week. What I would recommend is one sprint kind of day, really high intensity, right? And this depends on your age, but really high intensity. The second one would be moderately high intensity or moderate intensity, right? Where your heart rate's up, you can't really talk or hold a conversation. Your heart rate's up and you're going. You can hold that for several minutes to 15 minutes, say. And then you'd have another day, your third day of cardio, where you're hitting low intensity, but really long, 30, 40 minutes, you're cruising. And so you can partner that with your strength days, right? So you can just vary it. And now you're hitting three different metabolic pathways. You're hitting different realms of cardio. What this does is it creates an adaptation for your body. So for example, let's say that you only do 30 minutes of cardio on the elliptical, or you only do 30 minutes of cardio on the bike or a jog. That's great for your endurance in terms of your VO2 max and your aerobic capacity. But then if I were to tell you to sprint, are you able to do that? Maybe not with the same power and speed that you would be able to if you were to train it. And what does that allow you to do? Well, when you start sprinting and you start training it and you start training your anaerobic pathway, if you don't do that often, you adapt your body to become fitter, and your body falls into this realm of, wait, I need to be able to sprint as well as be aerobic. And so you start losing some weight. Kickstarts your metabolism, kickstarts your body, kickstarts your muscle growing and muscle regenesis. And that's super important if you're trying to lose weight and become the fittest possible version of yourself. Now, if you're the opposite, it's the same thing, right? So if you're the opposite and you're just a sprinter, but you have, or a power lifter, but you have no aerobic capacity, well, then jumping into that metabolic pathway and training under that, training under endurance is extremely important. It can be very helpful for you. So maybe you can add in low intensity at 30 minutes or add in a 45-minute low intensity. And that would allow you to unlock that whole new realm of training so that you can be another fit version of yourself where you can still lift just as heavy or sprint, but now you have this other tool in your toolbox of being able to go the distance on a run. And that's kind of the methodology that we look at, is trying to really make yourself the fittest version of yourself cardiovascularly, compared with, or combined with, not compared to, but combined with strength. Like, are you strong in different areas like the lower body push, your squats, your hinge, your upper body pull and your upper body push, and your core? And so that's something that I would definitely work on, especially when people are telling me, hey, I work out, but I don't see results. And that's why you can kind of change your metabolic pathways and target that. All right. The third thing is your breadth and depth of just being mobile, right? Mobile and functional. So we have our body that we can move in space. And sometimes you might not be able to run and hit your cardiovascular endurance because you have knee pain or your foot hurts, right? Or your hips are misaligned. or you can't squat because of that, or you can't deadlift because you have back pain. Well, that's where the ability to have mobility, flexibility, and functionality of your body is extremely important. You want to be able to move in space correctly, and you want to be able to develop the mobility so that you don't have like kinks around your body that prevent you from lifting or achieving cardiovascular endurance. So mobility, think about it this way. We actually have four mobility points. It starts with our ankles at the bottom. It's our hips, it's our thoracic, which is our spine, and then it's our shoulders. So if you have any weak points in there, it's going to limit you on a certain movement, right? Think about the overhead squat. The overhead squat is something where you hold a barbell over your head, right? So you're using your shoulders to press out and your thoracic to stay stable, and you squat down. And as you're squatting down, you're still holding the bar over your head, and it uses your hips, your knees, and your ankles. Well, if you can do that movement well, then that you're pretty highly mobile, and that's great. If you can't do that, then there's going to be some area that might not be as mobile as it can be. So let's break that down. Say the squat. Your ankles, your knees should track over your toes. Your ankles, how do you get them more mobile? You can stretch them out, you can foam roll them, and you have to work on mobility exercises to build the flexibility and the stretchability of it, I guess you can call it, with the stability to be able to hold those positions. The ankles are generally the tightest, especially when you're not training them. And it takes a long time to develop that, and you might not see much improvement after stretching it for a couple of weeks, but if you continue at it, you will chip away at that. And your hips are the next, and your hips really are the center of your body. So it's very common that one hip is tighter than the other. And I want to touch on the hips because if your glute muscles, which I'm considering your hips, or your psoas are tight, it might shift your hips up. And you might have knee pain from this. Knee pain can come from just being your hips misaligned. It's the center of your body. If one hip is up compared to the other when you're walking, you're kind of walking slanted like a peg leg. Of course, you're going to be putting more pressure on one knee than the other. So making sure that your hips are aligned, you can do that with chiropractic or stretching, and also digging them out to make sure that your glutes are released is very helpful to realign them and allow your body, lower body below, just to work in alignment, right? And that'll prevent any knee pain. If I have knee pain, that's not really a mobility issue. Knee pain is not a mobility issue at the knee. Knee is connected to your ankles and your hips. So generally, if you have knee pain, it can be tight muscles from your quads or your hamstrings, or even your glutes that are causing that knee pain. So that's something to look into versus if you go to the doctor, they'll just tell you to take medicine. I wouldn't recommend that. I would just figure out where you need to stretch and foam roll. You actually have your thoracic. Your thoracic is your spine. And so when you're in your thoracic part, how do you stay mobile? You should be able to bend your spine in like a cat-cow position, bending it flexion and out of flexion, and then also twisting it, right? You can turn your spine. That's a thoracic rotation. That allows flexibility in your body and being pliable, which is really important to have a safety when you're lifting, and that can really loosen up your lower back as well, especially with the hips, and the thoracic will help, especially with your lower back. Then you have the shoulders. Can you press out overhead? Can you rotate your shoulder, your arm all the way around your sockets without pain? Can you press forward? Can you pull up without pain? And if you can, that's what you want to strive for and continue to strive for. And if you can't, then you want to find where you have tight points. It could be your chest that connects in, your bicep, your tricep, or your shoulder muscles, or even your upper traps in the back. Everything can tie into that causes some sort of tightness. And you want to allow that to release so that you can be in the best functional physical movement capabilities that your body is capable of before you start doing strength training or cardiovascular endurance. And so one thing about mobility that's really important that I'd want to touch on is as you age, you see people that are elderly or elders that are stiff, right? They can't bend down as much. They just don't have the pliability of the muscle. And think about this is for whatever age you are listening to this, when you get older, you will be a fraction of your most mobile self. So if you can squat perfectly now, as you get older, it'll get harder and harder as your muscles kind of, I would like to say they kind of like tighten up more, or they dry up in a way, and your joints, they lose that cartilage over time. So things get harder and harder to do. So you become a fraction of yourself. So when you're older, if you want to be playing with your grandkids, if you want to be able to exercise continuously, then you have to think about how do you stay mobile? How do you have the highest percentage of what you were at your best? And so you need to be mobile now. You need to work on your mobility now, your flexibility now. If you have tight shoulders, you need to release those now so they don't get tighter, because they will get tighter as you get older. Release them now. Release your hips, release your ankles, release your thoracic. Make sure that your body is very flexible, very balanced throughout. And I think that's something that can really help with a lot of people, is just think about the fraction of what you will be, unfortunately, right? As you get older, of what percentage you will be at your best. And so make it your best now. Be your best now with mobility specifically, as the strength and endurance can always be there to continue to work, but you want to be the best you can possibly be. Okay, so far I've talked about your strength, high levels of strength, cardio or metabolic conditioning, mobility. And if you go back to the previous episodes that I've had, in episode 1, Sachin talks a lot about his training for VO2 max and zone 2 cardio in terms of aerobic and being an ultra runner. And that's a cardio piece, right? That's the aerobic capacity to become an ultra runner and to run marathons. And if you're curious to learn more about that, you can go back and listen to that episode. But what we're training there is something called zone 2. He's doing a lot of zone 2. So imagine you have, or you have 5 zones in your cardio training. So when you have 5 zones, you have zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Zone 1, low intensity, walking. It's just walking. Zone 5, super high intensity, right? Just all out sprint. That's like your anaerobic. So if zone 5 is all out, you can only do that for a little bit. You can't sustain that effort for a long time. Zone 1 is walking. You can do that for the most amount of time, low intensity. Zone 2 through 4 are in between. So zone 2 is about 60% to 65% of your max heart rate. What is your max heart rate? Your max heart rate on average is 220 minus your age. So if I'm 31, my max heart rate is around, 189, 190, let's say 190 roughly. But if you're 60 years old, your max heart rate is now 160. And so if I'm 30 at 190, I would take 60% of that number, and that would be my zone 2 range, 60 to 65%, right? And it's a different number if you're 60 years old, right? You bring your heart rate down, and that might be like 115, 110. That's 60% of your max heart rate, right? Now, what you're doing in training that is a zone 2 also feels like you're working at an effort where it's faster than a walking pace. It's a light jog pace, but you can have a conversation with somebody, not a full-on conversation, but you can still talk. That's like your zone 2 pace, and you can sustain that for 30 minutes to 40 minutes. That's zone 2. As you get more metabolically fit, you'll be able to complete more at that time or go at a faster pace while maintaining that same heart rate, right? And that's the whole part of developing that aerobic capacity. Zone 3 is higher than that. You shouldn't be able to talk in zone 3. Zone 3 is about 70 to 75% max heart rate. And then zone 4 is higher than that, but below your max heart rate of zone 5, right? So zone 4 and zone 3 are really where you develop cardiovascular fitness of the glycolytic pathway, your lactate threshold. So zone 1 and zone 2, more aerobic. Zone 5 is that phosphagen pathway that we're talking about, that anaerobic, that just like burn, like just it sucks. You can't really do it for too long. And then zone 3 and zone 4 are really that glycolytic lactic threshold where you're developing extreme fitness, and you can do interval training through that. That's very common in Orange Theory. The Orange Theory defines what is, anaerobic, or not anaerobic. Yeah, lactic threshold. So when we're looking at Sachin's talk back when he's doing zone 2, he's developing for a long endurance run, right? Trying 100 kilometers or running across Canada. He needs to do a lot of aerobic training. Now, his anaerobic might not be as well developed, but that's not the sport he's playing. He's developing aerobic to be able to run long. And if you listen to that episode, you can learn a lot more about that and see where he's going. Now, when we listen to the doctors, both Dr. Nagra and Dr. Sumal mentioned, hey, we want 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week at a higher heart rate. Really what you're targeting is zone 2 above, so zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, where you're really trying to shoot on getting your heart rate up and moving. And if you're going to do that 30 minutes a day, or 5 times 30 minutes a week, you really want to focus on varying it. Maybe you have a zone 2 day, maybe you have a zone 3 day, a little bit higher heart rate, maybe zone 4 day, where it's less than 30 minutes, but it's higher heart rate. You can do intervals and stuff. That's really going to develop that cardiovascular aerobic capacity that you have. And then it's with the trainers, both Julie George and Dilpreet Bhatta were talking about, is having a balanced life in terms of balanced cardio setup, and that's mixing it up. Sometimes it's sprint, sometimes it's endurance for a longer aerobic. And that's kind of what I'm preaching when it comes to cardio. Make sure you're hitting your different metabolic pathways. I want you to think of yourself as a car. And when you think of yourself as a car, The miles per gallon is your efficiency, and that is really your maximum output, your lactate threshold. How efficient are you before you just start burning out, right? And you can develop that with like zone 4, zone 5, a little bit of zone 3. The fuel tank of a car, that's your aerobic capacity, where you develop with zone 2, zone 1, right? And so how big of a gas tank you have. So if you want to get fitter, you want a big gas tank and a highly efficient gas tank. So that's why you're training both of those metabolic pathways, right? Or all three, I guess you'd say. Walking. When walking comes in, that's a low intensity, and there is a place for that. Walk every day. Walk as much as you can. Use your body. It's meant to walk. It's meant to move. Now, will you lose a lot of weight? You'll lose weight because you burn more calories and you'll be moving. Is it the best way to train? If you just walk, no. But if you walk continuously, like in your fitness regimen, that's great. Just make sure you add in some high intensity there as well. So what's this all look like? Let's break this down into a week, in a month, and a year. So say for the year you want to lose weight. You want to lose 10 pounds, you want to lose 20 pounds, or you're training for a marathon, or you're training for a 5K, or you're training for a strength thing. Well, that's where you can look at the entire year and break down how each month would look. Maybe you have higher training area where you're developing strength, another month or 2 months where you're developing endurance, and then another month or two where you go back to strength, or it's like a mixed combo, right? Depending on what your goals are. If you are trying to lose weight, then you're definitely trying to do this every day where you're building endurance, you're building healthy habits, you're building strength, and you're continuously working on a little bit by a little bit by a little bit by just putting pennies in the penny jar in the piggy bank each day. Don't think about trying to make things happen all overnight. Just think about piggy bank on a weekly strength plan. You have 3 days strength. So you do your upper body push, you do your upper body pull with your lower body pull, and you have like a lower body pull, right? Then each day, those are strengths. You'll change it with a cardiovascular one, hitting one of your pathways. Maybe you'll do a zone 2, like a low aerobic intensity with your upper body push day, and that's it on Monday, right? And you can throw in a dynamic sit-ups or something. You've hit your core, you've hit some endurance, and you've hit some strength. And then I would love for you to finish that off with some stretching, and that will build your mobility, right? Or foam rolling. And the second day you come in to work out of that week, well, if you did upper body push on the first day, you can do lower body push the second day, and you can do high intensity. More high intensity, you're hitting a different metabolic pathway. You're becoming fitter. And if you did dynamic sit-ups or dynamic core, now you can do planks as a static, right? Kind of switches it up. You can finish off with stretching a different part. So maybe you have 4 key points: your ankles, your hips, your thoracic, and your shoulders. So you'd stretch 2 of those that day. Stretch your shoulders out, stretch your ankles out. The next day you come in, you stretch your spine out and your thoracic and your hips, right? And third day you come in, you finish off with a lower body pull, upper body pull, and you hit that other metabolic pathway. And you hit another core, and you hit some more mobility. That's it. That's 3 days a week. The other 4 days a week, you can rest 2 days completely off, get outside the gym. In the other 2 days, you should take long walks, right? But it's a very simple concept where you're just hitting different metabolic pathways, you're hitting different core, and you're hitting different strength, and you can get that started. But that's the science behind it. Now, if you really want to hit your goals, 5 days a week helps, right? Add in a second push day under strength, or unilateral day. Add in a second leg day. Add in more cardio. You can do 2 zone 2s. You can do 2 highly aerobic, right? Or you can do anaerobic with intensity. And then that would break things down to really get your full fittest version of yourself. And I want to emphasize that when you're doing this, you're trying to become the fittest version of yourself. And when you change that, you create adaptation in your body. Creating adaptation in your body is really what allows you to change. You're trying to lose weight and it's not working. Think about, like, am I doing the same thing over and over again, or do I need to change something to create that adaptation to be fitter? And that's where it's really important to add in some of these areas that you might be missing. It might be that strength training. It might be hitting a different metabolic pathway that you haven't been hitting in your cardio. Or it might be stabilizing your core or increasing your mobility and functionality. So that's what the key takeaway that I want from this one. Weeks, like, you have your week. Now let's think about it on a week by week or a month. So week 1, put your effort in your strength training or even your intensity at 75% effort. Week 2, follow that up with progressive overload. So maybe do 80% effort. 80% effort really comes into, hey, I've increased the weight a little bit, but I maybe drop the sets. So maybe you did 5 sets of 5 the first week. Now you at 75%. Next week you'll do 5 sets of 4 reps at 80%, right? And then the following week go up to 85%. So now you've progressed over 3 weeks. Well, you can't keep doing that. You can't go linear, otherwise we'd be lifting 1,000 pounds and be getting we turn into athletic freaks. So then you take that 4th week to deload, to relax, deload, take everything down a notch, go to 60% effort on all your lifts and all your intensity. Allow your body to repair. It repairs the mind, it repairs your joints, it repairs your ligaments, and repairs your muscles. And after that, you come back down to 60%. That's 4 weeks in, right? You went 75, 80, 85, and then 60% on the deload week. That's month 1. Month 2, you go back to 75%, but a little bit heavier than the 75% that you did in month 1, right? So 75% plus 5 pounds. And you continue to do this method over month after month after month, and you see that you're slowly getting stronger. You're slowly getting fitter, right? You're knocking off, I'm going to run a mile, and now I've knocked off a couple seconds. You're chasing something. You're chasing your best version of yourself. And so I want people to really understand that. So building a fitness routine, really, it can seem confusing, but listen to the methodology of trying to be metabolically fit, try to be strong in terms of different areas of your strength, and trying to become as mobile as possible. If you have questions on this, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Also, I would think it's important to go back to the first 5 episodes to talk to people or listen to what they have to say on their expertise. And I'm excited to bring more people on in the next 5 episodes and the future going off of that. So I hope you all enjoy this one. There's a lot of information on how you break down a fitness regimen, but really trying to understand what fitness is and how you can apply this to make yourself a better person, a better and fitter athlete going forward. So thanks again for tuning into Kula. And this is a podcast that we're going to blow up. And I'm really excited for all you listeners. Thank you.